Today we are going to do some problems related to TDM. So here is our example 1. It says in figure the data rate for total input connection is 3 kbps, which means 1 kbps in this line, 1 kbps in this line, and 1 kbps in this line. Then it says if 1 bit at a time is multiplexed, which means 1 bit from this line, 1 bit from this line, and 1 bit from this line is multiplexed through this multiplexer. So what is the duration of each input slot, each output slot, and each frame? So we have to find the duration for each input slot, each output slot, and each frame. So for solving this type of problem, we have to remember one line, which is bit duration is the inverse of the bit rate. It is for both input and output, and the vice versa is also correct, which is the bit rate is the inverse of the bit duration. So for the first question, we have to find the duration of the input time slot. So for answering this type of questions, we saw in the previous slide that the duration is the inverse of the bit rate. So the data rate of each input connection is 1 kbps. This is 1 kbps, this is 1 kbps, and this is 1 kbps. So the duration will be the inverse of the bit rate. So 1 kbps means 1000 bit per second. So the duration will be 1 divided by 1000. So which is equals to 1 ms. So the duration of the input time slot is 1 ms. So in question number 2, we have to find the duration of the output time slot. So the duration of the output time slot, each output time slot is 1 by n times of the input time slot. Here n equals to 3, means the number of senders is equals to 3. So the duration of the output time slot will be 1 divided by 3 ms. For question number 3, we have to find the frame duration, which means the duration of each frame. So we see that each frame carries 3 output time slots. So the duration of the frame will be 3 times the output time slot. So which is equals to 1 ms. So another way we can say that the duration of a frame is the same as the duration of an input unit. So here is our example 2. It says that synchronous TDM with a data stream for each input. So this is synchronous TDM with a data stream for each input and one data stream for the output. So one data stream for the output. And it says that the unit of data is 1 bit. So we have to find the input bit duration, the output bit duration, output bit rate, and output frame rate. So to answer all the questions, we have to remember one thing. The duration is the inverse of the rate, and the rate is the inverse of the duration. So for question number 1, the input bit duration. So the duration will be the inverse of the bit rate. Here bit rate is 1 Mbps. So the duration will be 1 divided by 1 Mbps, which is equals to 1 microsecond. So for the second question, which is we have to find the output bit duration. So the output bit duration is 1 by nth time of the input bit duration. So here the input bit duration is 1 microsecond. So the output bit duration will be 1/4 of the input bit duration, or 1 by 4 microsecond. So in question number C, we have to find the output bit rate. So the output bit rate is the inverse of the output bit duration. So if we invert the output bit duration, found out the bit rate will be 4 Mbps. So another way we can find the bit rate, which is the output rate is n times as fast as any input rate. Here n means 4. So the output rate is 4 times as fast as input rate. So the output rate will be 4 into 1 Mbps equals to 4 Mbps. So in question number 4, we have to find the frame rate. So the frame rate is always the same as any input rate. So our input rate is 1 Mbps, which means 10 to the power 6 beat per second. So the frame rate will be 10 to the power 6 frames per second. So in example 3, it says that 4 channels are multiplexed using TDR. So this is the 4 channels. These are the 4 channels. Then it says that if each channel sends 100 bytes per second, that means the data rate for each of the input connection is 100 bytes per second. Then it says that if we multiplex 1 byte per channel, that means we are sending 1 byte from this channel to the multiplexer, 1 byte from this channel to the multiplexer, 1 byte from this channel to the multiplexer, and 1 byte from this channel to the multiplexer. So we have to show the frame traveling on the link, the size of the frame and the duration of the frame rate and the bit rate of the link. So frame contains 1 byte from each of the links. So the size of the frame will be 4 bytes. So 1 byte equals to 8 bits, 4 byte equals to 4 times 8 bits, which is 32 bits. So the size of the frame will be 32 bits. Then we have to find the duration of the frame. Before finding the duration of the frame, we find the frame rate. Then if we find the frame rate, then if we invert the frame rate, we will find the duration of the frame. So we know that the frame rate is equal to the input bit rate. So here it says in the question that each input channel is 100 bytes per second. So the frame rate will be 100 frames per second. Then if we invert the frame rate, we will find the duration of the frame. So the frame duration will be 1 divided by 100 seconds. So next we have to find the bit rate of the link. So each frame contains 32 bits and the frame rate is 100 frames per second. So in 100 frames there will be 32 into 100 bits, which is equals to 3200 bits. So the data rate will be, so the bit rate of the link will be 3200 bits per second. So here is example 4. It says a multiplexer combines 4 100 kbps channels using a time slot of 2 bits. So here is 100 kbps, 100 kbps, 100 kbps, 100 kbps. So these are the 4 channels. And it says that using a time slot of 2 bits, which means we will send 2 bits to the multiplexer at a time from this channel. So 2 bits from this channel to the multiplexer, 2 bits from this channel to the multiplexer, 2 bits from this channel to the multiplexer, 2 bits from this channel to the multiplexer. So we have to show the output with 4 arbitrary inputs. So what is the frame rate, what is the frame duration, what is the bit rate, and what is the bit duration? So we earlier said that the frame rate is equal to the input bit rate. So here the input bit rate is 100 kb per second. So we are multiplexing 2 bits at a time. So we have to divide this 100 by 2. So the input rate will be 50 kbps. So the frame rate will be 50,000 frames per second. Now, what is the frame duration? So duration will be the inverse of the rate. So the frame duration is therefore 1 divided by 50,000 second or 20 microsecond. Then we have to find the bit rate. So each frame contains 8 bits and the frame rate is 50,000 frames per second. So the bit rate will be 50,000 into 8, which is equals to 4 lakh bits, which is equals to 400 kbps. And what is the bit duration? So the duration will be the inverse of the bit rate. So the bit duration is 1 divided by 4 lakh second or 2.5 microsecond.